Millions of South Africans are battling to make ends meet. The latest Household Affordability Index by the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group shows that the cost of average food, household food, the basket there, has increased by 354 rand 52 cents in the past year. Of 44 core food items, mainly frequently purchased by lower income households, over 20 of these items saw price hikes. Joining me now for this conversation is Mervyn from the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group, and he's going to speak to us alongside Cosatu's Matthew Parks. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Can I start with you, Mr. Abrams? So we hear the increases there of about just over 300 rands to basic food items. And I read the weekend newspapers with interest that were saying, in particular the Sunday Times, that was saying that the food basket in February of last year compared to February this year has skyrocketed. Just give us a round figure of what the basic food items cost a family that basically is struggling to make ends meet right now.
Good morning, Kule, and good morning to all your viewers. Yes, so the basket of 44 basic foods, as you've said, has increased by close to 9% year on year. And a lot of these increase of this basket has to do with various foods in the basket. So, for instance, maize meal, rice, cake flour, cooking oil has spiked massively and continues to be at a very high level. And we're seeing that actually happening over this last weekend in many stores as people are buying out sunflower oil. We've seen chicken increase by something like 14%. We've seen eggs increase by about 10%. Beef by about 11%, margarine by about 17%, and bread by about 3% year on year. So these are all massive increases, and the outlook for this year is even greater increases due to higher fuel prices and greater commodity prices. For instance, wheat prices, soybean prices are skyrocketing of the current Russia-Ukraine conflict.
Matthew Parks, the fuel price seems to be a common denominator in the escalating food prices. Connect for us. You represent people who are largely working class. Connect for us the price of petrol that they have to contend with the escalation of food prices.
Sure. Look, I mean, we're a country which doesn't produce oil, so we import our oil or petrol from other countries. And we know the fuel price, oil price internationally is always very volatile. Whenever there's conflict in the Middle East or other countries which produce oil, like Russia, it has a huge impact. So you will see in the budget speech a few weeks ago, the Minister of Finance didn't increase the fuel price regime because fuel price has become so expensive that it really suffocates the economy, businesses, workers, and so forth. We're now going to see the fuel price increase. So that means the entire economy's pressures go up. So it becomes more expensive for farmers to get the goods from the farms to the supermarkets. It becomes more expensive to get clothes from factories to the retail sector. It means the wages that workers earn, maybe 10,000 rand a month, for example, will now be under severe pressure because all the prices are going to go up. I mean, inflation is already at a high of about 5.9%, which is quite high, given our normal target of about 3 to 4.5%. Many workers have not received wages in link with inflation for the past 2 years because of COVID-19. We've seen, 2.2 million workers having lost their jobs in the past 2 years. So even those workers who are lucky to have jobs are supporting increasing numbers of relatives who are unemployed, and so they're getting themselves further into debt. So there really is a cascading of pressure on all fronts, and it's going to get worse. And of course, when the inflation goes up and the fuel price is going to push it up more and more, the Reserve Bank is going to come and hit us on the side by increasing the lending rates, the repo rate. That means workers who have home loans, who've got car loans, have got credit cards, any type of loan to a bank are going to pay more on interest. So it's going to be a huge amount of pressure on workers. And of course, companies are going to struggle because less workers will be able to buy their goods. And that means companies are less likely to give workers inflation-linked increases to the salary. So it's going to be a very rough patch, so to speak.
Sure. Mervyn Abrams, add to this pain of the escalating cost of just about everything, add to it the July electricity tariff increases that are expected. How in the world are people expected to cope with this?
So what ordinary people on the ground tell us is that, already the basic necessities have become unaffordable. This is not as a result of the current crisis. This is a long-term crisis that have been building up in South Africa for over a decade. And so the only thing that households can do is to cut back. They have to pay this higher transport cost because of fuel prices, because they have to get that worker to work, because that's where the income comes from. And basically what households are doing is they're cutting back on the amount of food and the quantity of food that they consume, or they disconnect themselves from the electricity grid because they can no longer pay the increased electricity tariffs. And all of these have socio-economic consequences for South Africa in the long term. So neither of these are actually good survival strategies, but it's the only strategy that low-income and poor households can do is cut back.
All right, so households need to cut back. Matthew Parks, are workers seeing salary increases, though, that are going to at least match these inflationary pressures?
Workers who do receive such inflationary-linked increase will be very lucky. Where they will receive inflationary increases, it tends to be because workers are united, well-organized, they've got strong trade unions which are able to negotiate effectively, able to come with proposals which can help companies to survive, but also make sure those workers' wages are protected from inflation. But it's going to be a very, very painful patch for workers if we're honest. Many workers in COVID-19, 2020, 2021, didn't get increases. Many workers in different sectors of the economy, in the private sector, actually got salary cuts. Many workers were sent home without pay. So just as we're trying to emerge from a very, very difficult period, when the economy is in its deepest recession in this century, when unemployment is at an all-time high of 46%, we're now having to go through another dark patch because of the current war in Ukraine. And that's really going to hit us quite hard. It's going to hit us on the fuel issue. It's even going to hit us on food security because Ukraine and Russia are two of the largest wheat-producing countries in the world, and we still actually import a significant amount of wheat from them. So it's going to be tough. We'll have to make sure that as trade unions we are well organized to make sure workers' wages are protected from inflation. But also have to look at creative measures to try to support the economy. So there are things which are more medium and long term that can help to cushion the economy. They won't happen overnight, like fixing transit, because that can help to save and create jobs in the mining, the manufacturing, agricultural sectors. If you can fix Metro Rail, which is an affordable way for workers in the cities to get to work, that helps to ease the pressure on workers. There's a need for government, for Treasury to fast-track a pension amendment bill to allow highly indebted workers some access to the pension funds to help pay off debts, help to survive. We need to look at other measures to help stimulate the economy, like, for example, the 35 billion rand that Treasury has put aside to support SMEs. If we can start to address these issues, it doesn't happen overnight, but it does help to ease the pressure and help to create jobs and provide a bit of relief to the economy and to workers.
Mervyn Abrams, in the Sunday Times yesterday, you were quoted as saying, or should I say warning, that the household affordability crisis has, and I quote, the potential of a national security problem. What exactly do you mean there?
So, for me, what I was meaning there is that in any context, whether this is South Africa or any other part of the world, when people can no longer put food on their table and when people are not able to eat, then there are bound to be some form of protest. There are bound to be some form of potential security breaches. I mean, we saw that with the food riots when the price of wheat increased massively in the Middle East. We saw the uprising in the Middle East that actually led to the downfall of governments. We saw here in our province and in Gauteng last year that when not necessarily organized by the poor, I'm not saying that that was the case, but that people are ready to participate in a process where they can get food, whether it even be through means of the kinds that we saw in July last year. So it is a matter that we should take extremely, extremely seriously, because when people have nothing else and they have nothing to eat, then they will find alternative means to get something to eat. And that poses various security threats.
Matthew Parks, let's wrap up the conversation on the back of that ominous warning from Mervyn Abrams. You are part of what is called the Governing Alliance. You are in alliance with the ANC and indeed the SACP. There are calls on government to suspend fuel levies in order to relieve pressure on the food prices. Is that something that can be done? Is there even an indication that government could look into that?
Look, it has to look into it. Currently the fuel price is about 20 rand a litre, give or take. Half of that goes to the fuel price, the tax. Only half of it goes to the actual product itself. So really it is suffocating the economy. You might remember, Collie, 20 years ago, it was like a rand a litre. Now it's 20 rand a litre. So really it's displacing money from companies which are critical for them to buy goods and to employ and pay workers. It's pressurizing them to retrench. It's pickpocketing workers at a very small, meager wages. So really it's suffocating the economy. More so when we're going to see with the war in Ukraine, it's going to go up. And there's always going to be some war in the Middle East or somewhere in the world which is going to mess with the fuel price regime. So we need to look at immediate measures to ease that. It was quite positive in the budget speech that the Minister for Finance said there is discussions taking place between himself and the Minister for Energy, Minister Mantashe. That needs to happen quickly. We had a similar promise in 2018 by the previous Minister of Energy. Nothing came out of it. Look, it might not be easy because also it's a significant contributor to the fiscus, to the tax revenue. It contributes about 90 billion rand. But at the same time, it's better to give some relief to the economy, to avoid retrenchments, to enable workers to feed and take care of their families, to get their kids to school, to help companies avoid retrenchments, and to forego some tax revenue. But it has to happen. Government also needs to fix public transport, invest in metro rail, fix the buses, invest in taxis, because that can also ease pressure as we move people away from private cars into public transport. That lessens our dependency. But government has to do something now because we are sitting in a very peril economic situation. And Mervyn is not exaggerating. We saw the violence in KZN in Gauteng last year. Leave aside the criminal political orchestration behind it, but it fed into a sea of poverty and hopelessness. That cost the economy 50 billion rand. So rather, let's intervene on the side of the poor and the workers and the economy and see what can be done to provide some meaningful and urgent relief.
Matthew Parks is Cosatu's parliamentary coordinator, talking to us alongside Mervyn Abrams from the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group. Thank you both, gentlemen, for your time and indeed this timely warning, as one of the papers captured, that we face a winter of discontent.